Hello everyone and what's going on? My name is Great Plains Cow. Today we're going to be reviewing Throne and Liberty. This is only going to go over the open beta test that we just went through a couple days ago. So whatever is going on in the Korean servers right now, we're not even going to look into it. Just solely what we experienced here in the West. So what are we going to go over in this video? We're going to go over character customization, some settings in UI, combat, movement, progression system, visuals and performance, the MSQ of the game, and some open world events or some other type of matchmaking in the game. But before we begin the actual video, I do want to show my appreciation to all of you. Thank you for supporting me and my content and the journey that I have here on YouTube. We're nearly at 600 subscribers. If you want to show some support, please click that subscribe button down below. It will help me out tremendously. Leave a like on the video. It helps push the algorithm out, and leave a comment down below on what you want to see next. I do think I make some fun and interesting content, and if you think so, please consider doing all those options I just mentioned. Let's go ahead and begin the video. The first thing that we're going to go ahead and touch on is the character customization. So when it comes to character customization, this is probably one of the most in-depth creators that I've worked with in the MMO genre. This one here seems to be more streamlined in Throne and Liberty, with all the sliders and options broken down into different bite-sized pieces. You have some presets, but if you don't want to have those presets, you have a lot of sliders to sculpt your face. This character customization is really good, and I think I made my character look a little bit like me, so if you think so, then I did my job. And here's that final result of that character creation. Pretty good. So the next thing we're going to go over is going to be the menu system. We're not going to go into too much detail on it. Here on this system, it is very purple. I just do want to explain, or I do want to say that this game really loves the color purple for whatever reason. But here you can customize your gameplay, your notifications, graphics, sounds, shortcuts, accessibilities, info, and then there's another hidden little detail over to the right. I'm not sure what that is, but it wasn't that important. But when it comes to your shortcuts, there are some things I didn't really appreciate about it. And that's when it comes to your abilities. You were not able to hold the mouse button and then click the action key to change that shortcut. It wasn't an option for me. So the only options you have is Shift, Control, and Alt. And that kind of detail, or the lack thereof, is going to impact my enjoyment of the game, as the accessibility isn't all quite there as of yet. But when it comes to your UI and the gameplay and the camera settings, you are able to manipulate those quite freely and change the positions of your UI wherever you'd like. I'm trying to make it more action-based, and you are able to do that quite freely. So that's also a plus for the game so far. And the next thing we're going to talk about is actually the weapons. So what you can play with in the game is going to be the Great Sword, the Sword with Shield, dual wield daggers, longbow, dual wielding crossbows, and then some other unimpressive weapons that I see in the game, which are going to be the magic-based weapons, the staff and the wand. I completely just didn't even take a look at those. I despise magic weapons so much in games. And if you guys have again kept up with me on New World, my friend tends to play a lot of magic-based weapons, and they are just super overpowered in every game that you play. And I believe they are so here as well, or at least ranged weapons are. And so far, the combat system is pretty good. It's a little above average for me, but the only takeaway for me is going to be its tab targeting. I'm not a huge fan of tab targeting. I'm more into action-based like Souls-likes, and even New World has that kind of combat system. So that's the only thing I don't like. It's really difficult to balance in this kind of setting. For melee, they have gap closers, but when it comes to other ranged players, whether it be NPCs or PvP, you're always going to get struck by it. There's only a few mechanics in the game that will allow you to dodge abilities, whether it's a root, stun, a knockdown, or just for instance, just huge damage, is that little tiny stamina bar you just saw on the right side of the screen. This is actually your way to either perfect dodge or to parry, or just roll away, granting you some passives with that ability. You can only do it for so long, which is a positive, or it is a good takeaway, but the fact that you can't always avoid that damage is a concern to me. I just don't like tab targeting MMOs in a modern gaming setting. But the fact that it has some abilities to evade or dodge, for that matter, is a positive. Like, not many games will provide iframing. So this one it's almost there. So next up, we're actually going to highlight some PvP and show you what that's like. So here I'm going to attempt to fight this level 20, which seems to be more fair in my opinion. We have the same amount of attributes inserted, as well as possibly the same gear level. And what I like about this PvP system is that you don't have to swap weapons in order to use the ability. For instance, I'm using the crossbow with the bow, with my main bow in my hand as the auto attacker. I'm able to use my bow abilities in my left skill tree, and then the crossbow on the right side. That's the way I customized it. That's just how I prefer my kind of combat. But what's also really great is that you don't have to have them separated. You can have your first ability as your great bow, then your next ability could be your crossbow, or vice versa. Really change it up, making a weird combination.
And that's PvP.
And there's a huge possibility for combinations and attacks when it comes to PvP, and that's something I want to explore more when the game does come out. And when it comes to movement, I don't think it's terrible. I like the speed and pace of where all the characters do move. It's very fluid in that aspect, and it feels weighty. The attacks that you put on another opponent actually do feel like they have weight to it. The feedback part, really, really good. I enjoy it. And in this fight, particularly here, it was really, really close. I defeated him the first time quite easily, and right now my health is pretty low. He's beating me at this point. But also with my knowledge of my abilities and the skill that I had displayed, especially when perfect dodging here, allowed me to take the victory.
That was super close.
Something that I do like, you have to know your build and know the abilities and what they're going to do and what synergizes with each other. So skill does play a bit of a factor here. And the next thing we're going to go over is the gear progression. So when it comes to gear progression, this one seems to be a little bit more over the top. For New World, you're able to level up to level 60. That can get you enough attributes to take you and carry you, but your gear will also elevate your gameplay and your survivability, but also play into more of your strengths on what you want to go for. Here on this screen, you're able to level up your gear using these tokens that you can find out in the open world or earn them through the MSQ, and this will help elevate your gameplay. So as you can see here, from level 4 to 5, I've earned at least 3 to 7 points of additional damage, and this is going to be a huge leap in your power. So in Throne and Liberty, your attributes can only take you so far. Here, as you can see, I'm going to actually upgrade my hood, and it's actually going to give me 10 additional defense on some of these attributes. So this is where the PvP becomes more tier PvP. If you have the highest tier, you're most likely going to win. And for that example, I'm going to show you this duel here between a level 30 and a level 42. And here in this example, as you can see here, Baba Yaga is going to be level 30 and King Gray is level 42. Baba Yaga does have a lot of defense and he's not going to be taking a lot of damage. The level 42 is not doing nearly enough damage. As you can see, he's just tanking all those hits. No, it doesn't matter what King Gray does to him, he's not dying anytime soon. So Baba Yaga has some insane gear for his level. King Gray needs to upgrade his gear in order to do the damage that he wants. So that's what I mean when it feels like tier-based PvP. So here I am about to attempt to fight King Gray. His gear is pretty good. I wasn't able to hit him because he has a lot of ranged aversion. You can take a look here. You can see all those little letters coming out. If you can't see or make out what it is, it's saying it's missing. So he's doing a lot of damage to me because I'm not able to iframe or prompt misses as much as or as frequently as King Gray. He has a lot of gear where he's able to go against ranged type players. So again, as I mentioned, PvP seems interesting. You just gotta play to your strengths and know what you're going up against and pray that you actually have a higher tier gear than your opponent does. Let's go over some performance. So off the bat, the game visuals are amazing. It's set in Unreal Engine 4, but it feels like it's an Unreal Engine 5. If I'm wrong, please correct me down in the comments below, but When it comes to the visuals and performance, there's no stuttering whatsoever. I was able to stay consistently above 70 frames no matter where I was in the world, whether there's a lot going on, a lot of effects, and that's again partly due to the setting customization where you're able to boost massive PvP open battles. So I did turn that setting on, and it did make my game feel a little bit more stable, especially when a lot of effects are going on in the world. So in these starter areas, there was no problem whatsoever. So there's not a lot of MMOs these days that look as good as this game here. I would say New World, a game that I play religiously, is one of the best looking MMOs that I've played. It's no longer being considered an MMO, it's more like an action-based RPG, but still has MMO aspects to the game. What I also like about the world is the feeling of it. It actually feels like a role-playing game where you're set in a high fantasy world, and this is something that New World lacks. And I'm comparing this game to New World a lot, but it is actually an Amazon game, so it's only fitting. So with New World, it's a pirate-based game with a lot of ocean, boats, pirate, things like that nature. In Throne and Liberty, you actually do have that high fantasy. You have multiple races. Not playable races though, that for that matter, but you do have, like, you can see this goblin here. There's giant golems in the world. There's also vampires, which also is something that we'll go into later in this story and MSQ portion of the video. But overall, I think the world building is quite there, and we're gonna go ahead and talk about that now. So most players will always skip the MSQ in the story, but here I actually was more invested. You can find these fallen pages out in the world that gives you a little bit more context on what's actually going on. The world building is amazing, and it, partly due to the graphics looking so good, really does enhance this world. Especially when the cutscenes look this good, it's hard to skip. And to add to that, there are waypoints around the world that you could use to teleport to and from location to location, and they actually tell a brief history on the location or area that you just unlocked. So this brings a lot of elevation in story and lore and overall immersion to your gameplay, and it's something that I really enjoy. And later on, it's getting darker, and later on in the game, you actually do get to see some interesting characters. For instance, there's this boy who is trying to overcome the wolf invasion over Kingston, and the lore in that place now is every year, because of this heroic deed, the city now hosts a annual wolf hunting competition. And later on in the story, you actually do come across 3 characters that are in some kind of guild with each other, and they're called the something trio. I didn't really pay attention to them, but I think it's something as basic as the Fantastic Trio. These 3 characters actually get themselves into some trouble, as you can see in the screen. We come across vampires, and this is the part of the story where I was the most engaged the entire time. You become a vampire hunter in this area. And I like to think of them as these stories as in arcs. So the first story was the wolf competition thing that I mentioned earlier. And the second character that you meet is this mercenary who has fallen or wants to defend the front lines because he failed his unit, who had died tragically while defending this land. And then this story here where you come across these 3 people who are trying to investigate this sickness that's going on, but it turns out to be a vampire, and you're trying to discover who it is and how to destroy them. So even if you skip all of this, all the story, and you just click F to skip, the game actually does have a recap mechanic for you, where it's a very digestible, bite-sized information or summary of what you just skipped. So when I discovered that this was actually happening and the voice was actually connecting what I was hearing already, I actually ended up skipping the story and just taking in that recap.
You went to the wine storehouse, but you were too late to stop the blood ritual. Brutane said that if you kill the vampire who attacked Sophia, you'd prevent her from being turned into a ghoul.
We're nearly ending the video here, and we've covered all the aspects that I'd like to highlight, as I wasn't able to get a lot of time into the game. But if you, just real quick, if you made it this far, go ahead and leave a like down below. Again, it just takes a second. Thank you guys so much for getting this far. Or the next part of the video is going to talk about the open world aspect, or the matchmaking for dungeons or other game modes. In the open world, you will come across some events called conflicts, where there will be a boss that will spawn in the location, and it's up to you and other players to try to take down that conflict. There are some good rewards with it, but in these areas, there can also be PvP queued up. You'll come across some scumbags that will attempt to kill you while you're trying to collaborate with other players to take down this really difficult and yet challenging mob. That's just one thing. Those are called conflicts. But something I'm also going to go over very quickly is the certain areas or regions of the map. You're able to highlight some events and their time. They will have a schedule in place every hour. They seem to be rotating. And there's one mission where you're able to go against other players, like such as a race, where you're able to gather some stardust or star fragments and dump them into this location. And if you've been chosen, then you will earn some impressive rewards, such as money or some gatherable material. This video is already dragging on a little too long, so let's go into the last part of the video. This next bit here is going to talk about the co-op dungeon and then the secret dungeons. The co-op dungeons is what it says. You can collaborate with other players in the world by matchmaking with them. I'm not sure if it is cross-server, but there are plenty of players in the world that you are able to just quickly get a matchmaking and start this co-op dungeon, or you can queue it up with your party. The next part that we're going to talk about is going to be the secret dungeon, where you, the player, can do this solo, and all you got to do is interact with this little painting here, and you can go through these floors, which is going to be progressing in difficulty the further you go. So I was able to get to level 2, was not able to complete level 3. This was quite difficult on its own, but you could see the rewards you can earn are actually quite great. And this is the reason why it's so great is because it's actually going to help you get stronger and progressing your character. And with that being said, this is all that I'm going to be covering today. I know there's a lot of things that I've missed possibly, so please don't hate me for it. I'm just trying to do my best to get this information more to a bite-sized content, since I am a very small YouTuber. Who's going to want to pay attention to that? But yeah, this is it. There's not a lot of cons, as I mentioned, but there's also not a lot of positives either. The game, to me, as my final score, is I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's going to be above average. It's not mid, but it's going to be above average for me. Again, I'm not a huge fan of tab targeting MMOs, and that's literally majority of them. But hey, what are you going to do? It's something fresh. It's something new. That's a lot of what people want. And this is going to be my final score for the beta. But the score might change over the course of the release of the game, and I'm looking forward to it, seeing what's brand new. Again, I'm not going to go over some of the changes that just recently happened for the Korean servers. So if you want to see more of that information, comment down below if you want to see it. I will talk about it and do my best to cover it for you all. But for the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, liked it, and subscribed if you want to see more. It's getting late for me, as you guys can see. I will see you all in the next video. I have one more video in the works for this game. So hope you guys are there. See ya.